Welcome to Narrative Strokes. I turned back toward the path with the rotating red lights, the faint sense of urgency still pulsing in my veins. The last tunnel, the misted one, felt wrong. The figure I saw at the entrance haunted me, and the strange vibrations in the air made me feel like I was being watched. I didn't know where the path of shadows would lead, but I could only guess it was going to be worse. I turned, my breath shallow, and hurried toward the left-hand corridor, the one with the sweeping lights. The walls of the tunnel were now more defined. The smooth concrete I had traversed earlier had been replaced with old cracked tiles, yellowed with age and dirt. The faint buzzing of the red lights grew louder as I got closer, and the floor beneath my feet seemed to groan with every step, as if the entire structure was on the verge of collapse. As I entered the corridor, I was bathed in the harsh, sweeping beams of light that cycled from one end of the hallway to the other. The lights moved in a slow, deliberate rhythm, painting the walls in long, red streaks, illuminating the gaps between the tiles in jagged patterns. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally. With every step, the ground beneath my shoes clicked, sending vibrations through my body. But no matter how far I walked, the lights never seemed to move faster. The red light's constant pulse gave the room a surreal quality, as though I wasn't moving through a physical space anymore. Instead, it felt as though the tunnel was closing in on me, bending in unnatural ways, and every sweeping beam made the room feel smaller, more suffocating. I paused, my heart hammering in my chest. Was it just my imagination, or had the walls moved? I squinted, but the red lights flickered again, casting long shadows that filled the corridor. I tried to focus, listening intently. The distant hum of the fluorescent lights had died down, replaced by an eerie silence that was almost worse. The only sound now was the rhythmic beep of the light's movement. Every now and then, I thought I could hear a whisper. Something faint, too faint to make out clearly. But it was there, like a voice just on the edge of perception. It tugged at the back of my mind. A sharp metallic clank echoed from the far end of the corridor. I froze. It wasn't the noise of my own footsteps, nor the usual creaking of the walls. No. This was something else. I took another cautious step forward, drawn inexplicably toward the sound. As I moved, the whispers grew louder, indistinguishable, like multiple voices speaking in a language I couldn't understand. The sound seemed to reverberate off the walls, growing in volume as I walked deeper into the corridor. I tried to ignore it, but the weight of it pressed down on me like an invisible force. It felt like the lights themselves were watching me, moving in a way that was too deliberate, too exact. As if they knew exactly where I was, what I was doing. I didn't like it. I reached the end of the hall. A door loomed before me, unlike the others I had seen in this place. It was made of heavy, dark wood, polished to a shine that reflected the red light in strange, distorted ways. The air around it felt colder, though that could have just been my nerves. The whispers had intensified here, surrounding me as if they were coming from behind the door, beckoning me to open it. I could feel the pulse of the lights around me, each sweeping beam casting a strange shadow onto the door. The handles were made of iron, ornate, rusted, with intricate designs carved into the metal. It didn't look like the kind of door you'd find in a place like this. It didn't belong. But what was I supposed to do now? The sound of dripping water echoed in the distance, mingling with the soft shuffle of footsteps that weren't mine. I turned to look, but there was nothing behind me. Just the deepening darkness, swallowed by the light as it swept across the walls and floor. Was I supposed to open it? Should I step through? I placed my hand on the cold, rusted handle. The moment my fingers brushed the metal, a surge of unease flooded my body, making my skin crawl. But there was no turning back. If this place was going to trap me, I needed to find out what lay beyond. I pulled. The door creaked open with a sound so loud that it echoed down the corridor, far beyond what should have been possible. The room beyond was shrouded in shadows. An empty space, filled with only the faintest outlines of what might have been the machinery or old furniture. The temperature dropped the moment the door fully opened, and the whispers grew to a maddening crescendo. I stepped inside. The moment I crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind me, sending a shock wave through my body. I spun around, my breath coming out in short, panicked gasps. The space around me seemed wrong. The floor was covered in a thick, soft layer of dust that hadn't been disturbed for years. The walls were lined with panels that seemed to pulse with a faint light. But it wasn't the same as the red lights from before. These lights were softer, almost soothing. But there was something deeply unsettling about them. It made my eyes feel heavy, as though I were being lulled into a trance. I took a few steps forward, the dust crunching beneath my boots. The temperature continued to drop, and I noticed that my breath was now visible in front of me, swirling in the cold air. The walls of this room seemed to stretch upward, far beyond where my eyes could see, disappearing into blackness. Then I saw them. Figures standing motionless in the corners of the room. At first I thought they were mannequins, bodies made of wood and fabric, standing in perfect stillness. But as I drew closer, I realized they were far too lifelike. Their faces were pale, gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to follow me no matter where I moved. Each figure was dressed in outdated clothing, faded uniforms and tattered dresses, all worn with age. They were arranged in groups, scattered across the room like a collection of forgotten souls. And it was the silence, the unnatural stillness of the room that made the hairs on the back of my neck rise. I slowly took a step forward, and as I did, one of the figures turned its head toward me. I froze. The eyes that followed me were hollow, black pits, and for a moment, I thought they were alive, watching me, waiting for something. Then another figure moved. A soft creak of wood. It was like they were waking up, but they weren't alive. They were like shadows of people, frozen in time, waiting for something. Waiting for me? I spun on my heel and ran back to the door, but the door was gone. The once familiar passageway had vanished. The door frame was empty, like it had never existed. I stumbled backward, panic surging through me. The figures were moving now, stepping forward with slow, deliberate motions, their heads turned toward me as one, their black eyes reflecting the faint glow from the walls. I backed away, but the room seemed to stretch and shift, the walls closing in on me. I turned, looking for another way out, but there was nothing. The room was expanding, the figures coming closer. The last thing I remember is the whispers and the soft touch of something cold against my arm. Thank you for listening to today's story. If you enjoyed it, then comment down below and let me know what you think. I'll see you next time with another story. Until then, keep smiling and don't forget to like and subscribe.